here on how to use this microphone right here, and it can be booked out of the Confederation College Library for digital marketing and marketing analytics students. So let's hop right in. I'm using this microphone actually to make this video right now, so hopefully compared to some of my other videos, you'll notice the difference in the quality of the sound. So where do we get started here? Well, you'll notice on the microphone that there is a little knob right there. And that's an important thing to note because this references your gain. Now the word gain can be a little confusing, but it basically implies the volume at which the microphone is picking up your voice. How loud can it sound when you're doing the recording, or how sensitive is the microphone while you're speaking? So I've got it set to about, I would say 70%, or roughly about 2 o'clock right now. And I'm watching carefully when I record this that I'm looking at the meters in my OBS recording software, just to make sure that I'm not hopping too high into the red area, which we'll look at later when we're talking about levels, and make sure that I don't suffer from what is referred to as digital clipping. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to my software here and just show you immediately how do we get the mic to even work. So it's plugged in currently USB to my computer, but I have to tell my good friend DaVinci that I'm going to be using this. So if you drop down here in the pull down from the name DaVinci Resolve, might be different on PC, but look for your preferences. And here you'll see that there's a section called Video and Audio I/O. So that is your input and output. And that's a really important thing to keep your eye on. Understand that you have your audio coming into the computer, and then your speakers are responsible, or your headphones are responsible for putting the audio out into the world. Now, I'd strongly suggest if you're using this microphone for voiceover that you do use headphones. Isolate the sound inside your ears, and that way you can hopefully avoid any feedback that could occur. And we're gonna take a look at that as well in a second here. So I have currently set up under my Video and Audio I/O in my settings. I've got all these options under input device, and this microphone is called a Yeti. So I'm going to pick that one, and I'm outputting it currently. I'm not using headphones, but I'm currently outputting it through to my MacBook Pro speakers. And that's going to cause a problem here in a minute that we need to talk about, and that's feedback. So I'm going to hit save, and that will let DaVinci know that we're using this mic and that we're going to listen to our project through these speakers on my MacBook. So to get going, to start recording within DaVinci, we need to have a timeline to work with. We need a region that we can work on to start recording into. So in my media pool, I'm just going to right click, timelines, create new, and now's a chance to give this a good name. So this is going to be my audio example, and I'm going to have 2 audio tracks. In your project, you're going to be working on having a soundtrack as well as having your voice recorded. So I'm going to set those up right away. And I may as well click once and just give this a good name. So this is where my music's going to go, and A2 is where my voiceover is going to go. So I'm just going to call that VO. Cool. Now, over here, you know where I'm mousing down here, there's a little a little music note. And you click on that, and this brings you over into what's called the Fairlight environment. So a long time ago, DaVinci bought a company or a program called Fairlight, and they brought the Fairlight project into the DaVinci Resolve environment. That's why it's got a fancy name. Anyway, If you look carefully over on the left-hand side, you will see now your audio tracks. So I renamed it soundtrack under A1 and A2. And over here, we have what looks like an old school style mixing board where we've got these little sliders that deal with volume. These can be animated, so you can keyframe these to move up and down. That's a fancy word for that in sound called automation. But in this environment, we could say for a while we want to hear a sound at a certain volume and then certain amplitude, and then we set a keyframe for it. So these can be sliding up and down, or you can do it the other way, which I'll show you right on the timeline, which is actually just using the volume control on the channel itself. Okay, so let's get recording. Now, to do a recording in DaVinci, we have to tell the software what our input is going to be. So currently A2, you have to remember over here, A2 is where I'm recording VO. So I have to be mindful of that. So A2 over here requires an input, and it currently says that there is no input. So I got to click on that and tell DaVinci I would like to pick an input. Don't worry about buses right now. That's a much more advanced way of routing all of your different audio tracks into each other. We'll just worry right now about inputs. And you'll notice, you got to be really careful that there are two little boxes over here. So VOL, VOR. So that's VO left ear and VO right ear. So this is going to be a stereo recording. And then over here, we have the inputs, and it says YE, which is short for Yeti, stereo microphone. And yeah, oddly enough, this is a stereo mic. So we got to tell the system that we're going to use the left and the right channels of that microphone into these inputs over here. And then, old word from the early recording days, we're going to patch that into the track. So we're going to hit the patch button, and all should be well. So now this VO track A2 is ready for recording. Now listen carefully to what happens when I click the R button. The R button means arm for record. Because I'm sending whatever DaVinci is hearing, whatever it's recording, out through my MacBook speakers, I'll probably suffer from feedback. And you'll hear that right away. So I'll click the R. Yikes. That's real bad. Not good. The frequency is so high and it can be so loud that it can actually harm your ears. So be very careful not to affect your hearing when doing this process. That's why headphones are nice, because it's isolated inside your head and you're not going to be feeding that signal back into the microphone. Or if you don't have headphones, what I like to do is just mute the channel, so then it's not going to be sending the signal out. And then when I hit arm for record, hey, et voila, it's ready to go. Now we have to click arm for record before we can click on this button here to record the track. So let's go for it. I'm going to hit the record button. And once upon a time, a man was walking down the road and he encountered a wonderful friend of his, a young puppy that was going to become the best friend of his for the rest of his life. Just made that up. So, something silly, just so that we can see something down here. And you'll notice right away, if I go back to my edit page, I've got a brand new clip that I can drag down onto my timeline. Or if I look carefully at my existing timeline, it has actually put the clip right down on the timeline wherever I had put my playhead. If I wanted to, I could rewind and then record over it, and it will create a new file here. So where do those files live? They go into your project folder in a special temporary directory that is close to where your database is. So you have to be mindful of that. You could right click on this, I believe, and say reveal. Finder is the name of the system on a Mac for seeing where files are. This is the operating system, so I can see where the recordings are. Cool. So if I wanted to drag them off onto a safe place, I can do that in case I'm working on a college computer that when it reboots, it might delete your work. So be mindful. This might be best to be done on your own personal laptop so that you don't lose anything. But that's how you can gain access to the data that we just produced. So I'm going to hop back into Fairlight and I'm going to turn off ARM for record. And now I want to look, and it's important to look at your recordings as much as you listen to them. I know that might sound weird. How do we look at a sound? And I'll just mouse over the dark line below the track and expand it down. Now we can see here clearly that we've got a good signal. It's fairly nice. If it's very, very small the whole way through, you've got to re-record, and then you would adjust the volume of the input, or as we talked about earlier, the gain. So you would increase that. You might have to move closer to the microphone to adjust how loud you are, but you ultimately want to be able to see a nice healthy wave. And if it looks like this, you're in a good place. You're in a really good place. So I like to make a mistake just to show you what you do not want to see. So I've got the track muted. I'm going to arm it again, and I'm going to move really, really close to the microphone, and I'm going to blow out the track, and I'm going to cause what's referred to as digital clipping so that you can hear how bad that is. So I'm going to hit record and move close to the microphone, and I'm going to talk really, really loud so we can see on that track the actual wave is pinned all the way to the top of that region. So when we see that, we know we're in trouble. We know that we're going to hear something terrible. So let me turn off ARM for record. I'm going to turn off mute. So now I can listen to it. I'm not going to get any feedback. And just play that back for you so you can hear how terrible it is. And move close to the microphone, and I'm going to talk really, really loud. Yikes. And if you pay close attention to what's going on up here, where I'm putting my mouse, you'll see that there is a meter hopping up and down. And if it's pinning all the way to the top of this meter where it says 0, then you got to re-record. You got to change your gain. You got to decrease the input amplitude, and then redo it. So let's hear that again. And move close to the microphone, and I'm going to talk really, really loud so we can see on that track. This is real bad. That's real bad. So let's just get rid of that. So that's what you do not want to do. So when we see a nice healthy waveform like this, we know we're doing a great job. So it's not too thin, it's not too quiet, and it's not too loud. Now, in my room, I have noise. My computer is currently whirred up. The fans are making a lot of noise. So how do we compensate for that? Now you're outside, you're going to have wind noise. You're going to be standing in a hallway. There's going to be a fan blowing above your head. It's almost near impossible, unless you're in a soundstage, to really get rid of all of that noise. So that's where these come into the fray. Under effects, you've got a bunch of audio effects over here, and there's one in particular called noise reduction. You got to be careful with this one. It's not going to solve all of your issues, but if I just drag this down like so, well, let's listen to it first without it. And once upon a time, a man was walking down the road, and he encountered a wonderful... So I can see at the end here, there's a little bit of a moment where there's what looks to be some hiss. Life. You can't barely hear it maybe in the video, but right there is a hiss. So if I drag noise reduction on, you'll have some options here. One of them is auto speech mode. Just try turning that on and seeing what happens. Listen carefully and see if we get rid of that hiss. And once upon a time, a man was walking down the road and he encountered a wonderful friend of his. Beautiful. Sounds great. Now in here, there are tons of plugins. There's tons of effects that you can use that make your stuff sound better. For instance, I'm going to drag chorus down. Chorus is a nice touch. And while you're messing around with these, you can try turning on the loop so that it's going to loop around whatever you have selected. So you can really focus on what that sound is, how that plugin effect is working for you. A young puppy that was going to become the best friend of his for the rest of his life. Now it's subtle, but I can hear it, and it's just sort of filled out the sound a little bit, and it sounds really, really nice. Now, I have to pay close attention to where I'm applying my effects. So if you want to get rid of one, you highlight the region, inspector, and under effects here, you'll see I've got the noise reduction. You can toggle it on and off. And I just hit Command Z to get rid of the other one. So if I've got chorus on here and I turn on inspector now, you'll see that now for that one clip, I have chorus available with all of its settings. So you can get rid of an effect by just highlighting the clip, going to inspector, and then hitting the little garbage can to delete the effect. One thing to keep in mind, if you are dragging effects onto clips, it is not changing the entire track. So I might choose to do an application to my entire A2 track, because over time you might have a series of different clips and you don't want to have to drag that down onto each one of the clips and set and create the settings. So over here in the mixer, they actually have an area here for effects, which is really nice. I'm going to drag chorus instead onto the track over here and just drop it. Awesome. I'm going to change my default to wide dialogue. And now this entire track has the effect applied to it. And that means anything else I record or anything else I put on this track is going to have that effect. And once upon a time, a man was walking down the... Nice. And hiding down here at the bottom, oh, there just happens to be something completely dedicated to the vocal channel. So I'm going to grab that and drag that onto my A2. And look at my defaults up here. There's only one preset. But what this is giving me is an equalizer, which gives me the opportunity to manipulate my frequencies. And I can turn on my compressor. Now, really, this is this one specific effect, this vocal channel. And I'm going to delete it, actually. I'm going to delete this plugin. It's really giving you 3 plugins that exist in the list. So I might, for example, say I would like to compress my audio. So in here, there's a multi-band compressor. And what a compressor does is it takes your loudest moments in the recording and brings them down, and takes your quietest moments and brings them up. So it compresses the signal and makes this nice average of what you're recording should look should listen like, should hear like, should sound like. Anyway, so here we are in the multiband compressor. I'm just going to drop this down and I'm just going to say impact and balance and just let the software do its job. It's going to be subtle again. And once upon a time, a man was walking down the road and he encountered a wonderful friend of his, a young puppy that was going to become the best friend of his for the rest of his life. Cool. So I've got the noise reduction on the actual clip here, and I've got chorus and multiband compressor on the entire track. And it's nice to put the noise reduction potentially exclusively on the clips, because then you can treat them one by one. But there's nothing preventing you from grabbing noise reduction and just applying it over to the track itself. So maybe I'll just highlight that, pop open inspector again. Noise reduction is on the clip and not the track, so I'm going to throw that away. I'm going to go back to effects, and if you can't find stuff, just be mindful that there is a little search engine up top here by clicking on the spyglass, and I'm going to look for noise, and I'm going to drag that over to A2 so that it's going to clean up my noise across the entire track and just turn on auto speech mode. Rewind and give it a listen. And once upon a time, a man was walking down the road and he encountered a wonderful friend. Yeah, this is what we refer to as mastering. There's a lot more to it than this. So for all of the audio engineers out there in the world, please, I'm not trying to oversimplify what you do for a living, because this is a lot harder than I'm making it look. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, and this is going to be a nice way to get your voiceover recordings to sound really, really nice. Now, somebody in class asked me the question, like, can I cut my audio? Like, can I edit it? Well, absolutely. So if I head back to my my edit pane here, and say, for example, I have an awkward moment where I said, awkward look. Maybe I messed up a little bit and I want to just keep going and do a second take of my voiceover recording. Then you can head back in here and clean it up. So there's a weird moment here where I don't like where I said young. Well, puppies are young, so I say here, young puppy. That was young puppy. And then there's this moment where I inhale. I'm going to clean that all up. So I'm going to make this bigger so that I can see what's going on. If you're working on audio, you might want to just completely push your video out of the way. Give yourself a lot of room to work here. Zoom in, get in there and really focus on the wave. Friend of his. So there's a weird moment where I pause between friend puppy. So I want to get rid of all of this from A to P, from A to P. So I'm going to slide back my playhead. I'm just going to do it freely here. I'm just going to use my blade tool. I'm going to cut and then head down here to where I say puppy, hit cut. And then same as other moments where we do a ripple cut, that's going to pull it back. That was going to become. Did I delete puppy? Puppy. I did by accident. So undo. B is blade tool. A is select. Right click. Ripple cut. I should learn that shortcut. And let's hear that. Is friend of his puppy. So I got rid of the word young. Friend of his puppy. Or what else you could do is go back into Fairlight and completely record over this moment if you wanted to just fix it. Let's give that a shot and see what happens. So it'll remember where you were in the playhead. And I can literally record right over this. So, friend of his, puppy. Let's try it. Wonderful. So, just for review, mute your track, arm for record, put your playhead where you want to do a record over, and then just hit the record button. I might want to turn looping off. Take a listen. I muted it. A wonderful. See what I did by accident? I hit arm for record and unmuted it, and I started to get feedback. Be careful. That's why headphones are so good right now. If I had headphones on, then I would be able to scrub back and forth and really work on this and not have to worry about the muting of the track. A wonderful. What am I trying to say here? He encountered a puppy. That's all I want to say. He encountered a puppy. He encountered a puppy. So all I want to do right here is say a puppy. So I'm going to mute it, arm for record, and it should overwrite this. A puppy. He encountered a puppy. Cool. Friend of his, puppy. So it sounds less awkward now. I can go back to my edit. I'm going to zoom back a bit. Encountered a puppy. Now that sounds too loud, so I can bring down the volume with the little white line. Make it fit a little bit better. And he encountered a puppy. Now I've got a weird moment where I pause because of my attempt to re-record. So I can cut that. Go back to your select tool by tapping A. I'm going to do a ripple cut. Encountered a puppy. Encountered a puppy. And now I can bring the volume of this up a bit if need be. Encountered a puppy. Better mix. This guy here, I need to cut it. So I'm going to use the blade tool. Cut right about there. And then this whole moment is now awkward. I can get rid of it. That also says a puppy. So let's cut this. Yeah, I'm going a little bit overboard here. I'm just trying to show you that you can get in there and edit your audio. Ripple cut that. Maybe bring the volume of this up to match. And while I'm talking about this, usually you want to take the time right now to look for interesting moments like this here, where I've got some, this is going to lead to some clipping. So I can bring the volume of this down, but I'm bringing the volume of everything down. So you can add yourself some keyframes in here. There's another plugin, another effect you can use called limiter, and the limiter filter will actually bring all of your hottest moments down, all of your loudest moments. Or you can get in there, you know, I'm just going to hold down the option key and make myself some keyframes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then bring this down. You can see where I'm building a little trough there. You got so much flexibility to do anything you want and get really granular about the quality of your sound. And as I've mentioned so many times in class, any good video, any good film, 50% of your effort and energy should go into, and your budgets, 50% of it should go towards your sound, if not more. because your sound is really what tells the story. Your images are one thing, but audio is so important. So let's rewind and just take a final listen of this. And once upon a time, yeah, you can even hear that says once upon a time. It's crunchy at the beginning because it was too loud. And once upon a time, it sounds a little bit crunchy. That's the word I can use. It sounds like it's got some distortion. I would record it again. I'd do it again. Everything else looks visually across the timeline to be quite nice. So let's listen to that. Man was walking down the road and he encountered a puppy that was going to become the awkward moment. Cut it down, select, ripple cut, a puppy that was going to become the best friend of his for the rest of his life. Cool. Well, I think I'm going to leave the tutorial here. I could go into a lot more detail. One last thing. If you do have moments like this, where I can see that there's I can visually see noise here. I'm just going to hold down the Option key. I believe it's Alt on the PC. And I'm making 2 keyframes, one to pin the volume on the left side, and then I can just drop this down if you want to mix that out. It's a nice way to be able to do that on the timeline. I can drag that all the way down to have no influence over the soundtrack for that layer, and then just I could have just dragged this back too, but I just wanted to show you that you can use these keyframes throughout to manipulate sound over time. Yeah, so I'm going to leave it at that. Once more, this is available in the Confederation College Library for book out. Happy filmmaking, my friends. Have fun.